when did the narcotics bug hit? When did you decide I like working dope?
Probably the real kicker was, and I won't go into any names or too much detail, but there was a couple ladies that worked in one of the courts that I frequented, and they were really nice. They were clerks and stuff, and they were related. And one day I was there, I had a case, and I was waiting for the proceedings to begin. And the one lady got a phone call from one of her children, said couldn't wake up the other child. So they asked me if I could give her a ride, and I said, "Well, to home." She didn't have a car. I said, "Well, certainly, as long as the judge says it's okay." So when I see the judge, he said, "Yeah." So we get in the car, and I'm not thinking anything. This child was 15 or 16, I guess. And on the way up, this clerk asked me, "Well, is there any type of drug that could cause this?" Of course, I had to say, "Yeah." "Well, I think my child's using drugs." So I called for an ambulance to meet us there. And then we went code 3, lights and siren, and we got there, and the ambulance crew was standing on the porch and with very somber looks on their face. Make a long story short, I took her home to find her daughter dead from a drug overdose.
Welcome to Game of Crimes. You know, it is amazing, Steve, that I'm sitting up straight for this podcast because we said we were going to talk about it. We'll get into it in a minute about travel hell schedule, and flights being canceled. But in the meantime, we are excited to be back. This is going to be episode 62 of the greatest podcast show on earth, Game of Crimes. I am Morgan Wright. I am your host, the host with the most hair, obviously. Literally here with my partner in crime.
Hey, it's Murph, everybody. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome back. Hey, guys. And I got to tell you, too, just keep the reviews coming in. Steve and I will tell you, our episode with Natasha is the comments are just snowballing. They're starting to get more and more. And people are just, I actually just got a private message on Facebook Messenger yesterday from a guy who said, "Look, I'm a wildcat for life, but I was so embarrassed by my school for doing this."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, "Hey, that wasn't the goal. There's a lot, don't get us wrong, a lot of good people at Arizona University. Just a couple people there decided to be the moral police and without knowing somebody's story and ruin somebody's potential. So shame on them. Not the university, but they are part of the university."
And the person who was being the moral police, look at how she did it. She did it on a swingers blog.
Yes, she did. Okay, well, hey, if you like those comments and you like us, just head on over to Apple and Spotify now. Give us those 5 stars. It really helps out a lot. I don't normally read a lot of the comments on there because some people they don't listen to the whole thing. They don't understand our thing. And so they just leave some. Yeah, they're not hurtful. You can't hurt our feelings, but it's just, I just wish people would take the time to do more than just a reflexive comment. Hey, look, if you like us, great. And if you don't like us, that's great too, but give us a shot, and then just give us a rating over there. And that's all we ask. So also head on over to our website, gameofcrimespodcast.com, for everything out there, our book list, our merch, our mailing list, all that good stuff. We don't spam you a lot. We don't put out a lot of emails, but when we do, by God, it's important. And so you should pay attention.
That's right, what he said.
That's right, damn it. Also, follow us on that thing called the social media. They're on the interwebs, at Game of Crimes on Twitter, at Game of Crimes Podcast on Facebook and the Instagram. But Steve, where you got to be? I'm going to ask you one more time. Where do you got to be?
You got to get over on Patreon and check us out over there. We just did a thing this past weekend with our highest level Patreon subscribers where we did live Zoom meeting with them face-to-face. Pick their brains. They came up with some great suggestions, especially one about Morgan interrupting everybody. We're gonna follow through.
I do not interrupt everybody. Just
let's see there. There you go.
I don't either.
But it was fantastic, and the support that they showed us and the love was fantastic. I just loved it. So we're going to continue doing that. And that's just one of the many things we got on Patreon. There is so much content on there. I think we've got more there than we have on our regular shows here. So it's fantastic. Come and give us a shot.
Yeah, and look, we just got through, by the time this comes out, episode 3 of The Real DEA Narcos, talking about the Real DEA Narcos, Cali edition, Chris Feistel, Dave Mitchell. I get to edit these things, and I'm telling you, it's amazing how much content these guys have, what's in their brains, the story. It's over there. And what Steve was talking about to our Warden of the Throne folks. The other thing they got too that's special is they got an idea of things we're working on, upcoming episodes, things that we won't disclose even on other levels of Patreon. So they get exclusive access to some of the neat things that are coming out. So head on over there, patreon.com/Game of Crimes, patreon.com/Game of Crimes, or head on over to PayPal. Use our email, gameofcrimespodcast@gmail.com or paypal.me/Game of Crimes, whatever it makes it easier for you to support the cause. But guess what? As we do with anything, this is our standard disclaimer. This is a show about crime. We talk about bad people doing bad things and bad people doing bad things to good people. We take the stories extremely seriously. But what, Steve?
But what? But we never take ourselves seriously. We want this to be fun. We bring some serious stories on here. And if you listen to Natasha's, now we did cut back on our attempts at comedy on that one because that was such a serious topic. But and you know what? We're probably going to do some follow up on Natasha's story just because of the response we're getting. So, but we're going to have some fun in the meantime.
Well, if we're going to have fun, guess what time it is, Murph?
It must be time for Small Town Police Blotters.
You are getting slower. That Florida sun is slowing you down.
There must be a slow down connection here because I'm watching you as we're doing this. I don't understand why we're not connecting here.
Well, we are. You're
probably
just
because
slow.
you're from Kansas.
Yeah, and you're from Florida. Hey,
I got to tell you real quick before you say that. We got to speak at the DEA Academy this week, and there was a couple Kansas guys came in, so I had to be. There was a lot of troopers in there. I thought I was going to get my ass whooped before I got out there.
You're going to get your ass whooped. Well, we will talk about that in a minute. In the meanwhile, let's get back to our regularly scheduled Small Town Police Blotter. By the way, Steve.
Here we go.
Another Florida story. It is a Florida story. It is no, actually, technically, it's a California story. It should be about Florida. Steve, you can get DNA from all sorts of stuff, right? So they've used it to solve a lot of crimes. You get DNA from sweat and just your finger touching. It's called touch DNA hair. This one, Steve, first case of its kind in California. Accused burglar doesn't flush toilet, leaves DNA for police. Number 2 got him 5 to 10. So the man accused of burglarizing a Southern California home took a bathroom break and left DNA in the evidence in the toilet that led to his arrest. An investigator said the suspect did his business and didn't flush during the October break-in of the city of Thousand Oaks, said Detective Tim Lohman of the Ventura County Sheriff's Office. Ventura Highway in the springtime. It's a great old American song. They conducted DNA. It matched another profile in the national database, and detectives tracked him down at his home in the nearby city of Ventura. He was arrested on first-degree residential burglary. His bail set at $18,000. Lohman said it's the first DNA burglary match case he knows of with fecal evidence collected from a toilet.
Wow, talk about a shitty job. But think about it. You're getting ready to commit a burglary and go in somebody's house. And you got the urge, don't you think you'd go to the bathroom before you go and start committing your crime?
Tell you what, believe it or not, actually, there are people when they commit certain types of crimes, could be like homicide, they get so overwhelmed they actually have to evacuate their bowels, as the saying goes. So, believe it or not. Well, Steve, this one I believe may be from Bartlett, Tennessee. I couldn't track it down to be sure, but guess what, Steve? You ever remember as a kid, eating certain cereals like, even as an adult, like, Cheerios, Trix, Lucky Charms, right?
Frosted Flakes, yep.
Frosted Flakes, right? Well, you would think Lucky Charms would be lucky. Apparently it wasn't. Thief takes off with Lucky Charms cereal. A Bartlett woman in the 500 block of Deer Park reported that her box of Lucky Charms cereal was stolen, according to a police report. Apparently it's not so lucky.
I'm sorry the woman has suffered a theft, but you called to report somebody got your cereal?
Yeah. Well, hey, this is a follow-up to our Small Town Police Blotter from last week. Remember, Steve, last week where we said somebody was gone by and they reported the dog in the cage. It turned out to be a stuffed dog?
Yeah.
Okay, we have a follow-up to that from the city of West St. Paul, Minnesota. Missing bird. A caller reported June 30th that a bird had been stolen from an apartment in the 100 block of Haskell Street East. It was later determined that the bird had not been stolen, Steve, not at all. but was lying dead at the bottom of its cage.
I guess they don't change the papers there very often.
Oh, man. It reminds me of the Dead Parrot sketch with Monty Python. He's not dead. He's just pining for the fjords. He's deaf. He's dead. He's bereft of life. Anyway. Thus endeth the reading for today. Kyrie Domine Dane es Requiem. All right. So that is it for Small Town Police Blotter. Thank God, right?
Yeah, I was just looking where Bartlett, Tennessee is. It's a suburb of Memphis. That's where I was born.
Walking
People
in
there are
Memphis.
smarter than that.
There are songs about almost every city out there. But hey, anyway, let's talk about this one because this is another, well, I say friend of yours, but we've exhausted all of your real friends. This one we had to pay.
Nah.
And the great thing about this episode is you get a twofer. You had me, we're going to talk about General Manuel Noriega, but when you said, ask him about the Boobie Boys, I said, okay, I'm a guy. You got my attention.
Nobody ever told us, and even Lenny didn't tell us how the guy got his nickname. But this is a good friend of mine. We worked together, not cases together, but we were signed in Miami during the same time period back in the late 80s, early 90s. And everybody's heard of General Manuel Noriega, the dictator that took over Panama.
And stole George Young's $65 million.
Yep. And just, was taking payoffs from everybody and their brother. If you wanted to offer him cash, he'd take it and you could get whatever you wanted. Well, Lenny was assigned with another DEA agent, Steve Greeley. They were the two agents that were assigned to conduct the investigation and get it ready for prosecution against Manuel Noriega. And of course, we know the U.S. went down there and snatched his happy little butt out and brought him back. But so as I was talking to Lenny about prepping for this, I said, man, this is a great case. Everybody's going to love it, hearing the real story, Lenny. And he's like, I got to tell you about this other one. You got to look up the Boobie Boys. And he spelled it for me. Like, all right, Lenny, is this something we want to talk about on the podcast? He said, just look them up. And I did. And oh my gosh. I mean, when you talk about a violent crew, and I know if I would have thought I would have heard about that case just because of the Boobie Boys. I mean, that's a name you don't forget.
We're guys. You can't. Exactly. Hey, but you also had another connection to this case, too, because you were in where the trial was being held. You had brought up a Colombian national police officer, and you got a special request to do what?
Yeah, so when we would bring the Colombian police officers up, then in this particular case, I brought a captain up, Captain Moreno, and we were interviewing some informants on some things going on in Colombia. And, of course, while they're here, they want to go on shopping trips and things like that. So I said, well, Captain, what specifically do you want to do? And he said, you know what? He said, isn't Manuel Noriega on trial here in Miami? And I said, yep. And he said, can we just go in and see him? I'd just like to see him in person. So we called our office with the U.S. Marshals, and as they brought Noriega back in after lunch, sitting at the defense table before the judge and jury came in, the marshals allowed us to walk through the courtroom, and we got to see a little pineapple face sitting there. And when I say little, that describes him. I mean, you talking about a man with a Napoleon complex. Holy cow.
As we say, he's a most unfortunate looking gentleman.
That's a very nice way to put it. But his stature too. I mean, he was a very small person he wasn't trying. He was actually acting like a giant dictator. You know what? He got slapped down.
Yeah, he did when you control a little country like that. But eventually, guess what? It catches up with you. They played music, psyched him out, finally arrested him. And we're going to get into that, though. But, Steve, we cannot find out about the story until I ask you one big question. Are you ready to play the biggest, baddest, most dangerous, fruit-friendly game of all, speaking of pineapple face, the game of crimes?
Hey, everybody, get in, sit down, shut up, and hold on. Here we go with Lenny Athas talking about Manuel Noriega and the Boobie Boys.
I finally said, screw this. We're going to start this podcast because these guys wanted to do Old Home Week. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is all the good stuff. Quit talking about this shit until we can hit record. So welcome back, everybody. We have got yet another fascinating issue and person we're going to talk to. No, that's not Murph. He is neither one of those.
They all love hearing me. They like my country accent.
Like my country accent.
That's right.
Martha. So, but no, hey, look, his name is William, but he goes by Lenny. And it's not Atlas, although you might think it's Atlas because, he does carry the weight of the world on his shoulders with the work he does now. But it's Lenny Athas. So, hey, Lenny, You are the guest of honor. Welcome to the Game of Crimes podcast.
Well, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Morgan. And it's an honor and a privilege to be here.
As
It's
I
an
always
honor to
say,
have
you
you on
say that
here.
now. You say that now. Wait till this is over.
A couple hours from now, you've been like, what the hell?
Where's the form I fell to get the last few hours of my life back?
How'd I get away from these two? I can't even click off of here. They've got me locked in.
But I do want to mention something right up front. For all the shit Murph gives me, I want you to give your pal shit about being a trooper.
Well, got a little interference there.
Yeah, got a little interference. So, yeah, we got a little interference, Lenny. So, hey, look, it's technically Lenny Athas or William L. Athas. You are now we'll talk about that later, a lawyer in private practice. But you started off as the highest thing you could possibly do. And then, you went to DA. But let's talk about what the hell possessed you to even think about law enforcement in the first place. So, you started off in Maryland. So where were you living at the time? Where'd you grow up?
Well, I was born in Baltimore, Maryland. And first few years I lived in a place called Pikesville, which coincidentally enough is where the Maryland State Police headquarters is located. And I went to Catholic school, and my name is William Leonard, and Catholic elementary school. The nuns decided there were too many Williams. A lot of people named their kids Williams in those days. So they decided I was a Leonard. Not me or my mother or anyone else. The nuns did.
So say
And
it
then
then,
Leonard
kid.
just got
Once they wave the sign, pal, that's it.
yeah, they pretty much it's not appealable. That's the court of last resort. Anyway, so it over the years through my friends that I associated with and stuff, it just got shortened to Lenny, and that's where here it is now. 70 years later, people still call me Lenny. So I grew up there, and then when I was 11, we moved up to a town called Reisterstown, Maryland. It really wasn't very far, 10, 12 miles up the road north. In Baltimore County is the subdivision. And one time I went to Catholic school there too. And one time, I think I was probably the sixth grade, we took a field trip over to Washington, D.C., which is only 40 some miles away. So it was easy to do in school. And we took a tour of the FBI building. And I was so enamored with what I saw and heard and experienced that I said, I want to get into law enforcement. And that kind of just stuck with me all the way through high school. And then I applied in my senior year of high school to become what is known as a cadet. It's a program the Maryland State Police has where they will hire 18-year-old or 18 or 19-year-old high school graduates right out of high school, and they put them in non-critical positions. In other words, me personally, they sent me to a barrack that was the furthest away from where I lived in the Western Maryland, in the mountains, Cumberland, Maryland.
I've been
And
through the
my
Cumberland Gap, man. You're even
Oh,
for
it's
a small
beautiful.
state, it's beautiful, but it's out there, especially that fog in the morning where it's coming over the interstate there. And
I still, 60 years later, still have friends there that I hear about. It's just
so what'd you do?
50 years
What'd you
later.
do at
It's
the barrack?
1970. So I'd work the radio. I would help at crime scenes, and I would ride with the troopers on patrol to assist them at accident scenes with flares and things, and whatever happened. And it was really a fantastic experience. I lived in the barrack. We took our meals in the barrack for the first couple of years I was there. We had a chef that cooked the meals. And back in those days, in the state police, you didn't work 8-hour shifts and go home. You worked 10-hour shifts 5 days a week. And if you worked night work, they would cut it maybe down to 9. But and you took your meals in the barrack, and it was and there was no overtime. If
Oh
something
no, that
happened.
was back before FLSA, what they call Fair Labor Standards Act. There was no 171 hours in a 28-day period. But I want to go back to that. So you said you were living there. Was that just simply because it was too far to go back and forth, or was that a requirement that you live in the barrack?
No, it was because I didn't have anywhere else to live. That was offered. I didn't have to stay there, but I was 150, 60 miles from where I lived.
It sounds a little
one way,
strange.
so-
The troopers bringing young boys to live in their barracks. Do y'all do that out in Kansas? Oh, you did that with sheep. I'm sorry, I forgot about that. Okay, go ahead.
Murph, you don't?
Excuse me. Was there a city cop interrupting us?
Yeah, there was a little guy from Krusty Crotch, West Virginia.
There was a real
Um,
cop interrupted you, and I got both of you in one shot there. Did you catch that?
Shots fired.
Lee Ermey
Okay.
in was it Lee Ermey in
Arlie Ermy, yeah.
Arlie Ermy in Full Metal Jacket. I think he was from out your way, wasn't he? Wasn't he from Iowa or Kansas?
That I don't know. We'll have to look that up. Steve has got access
See
to
what I
the
can find there.
Al Gore's amazing internet. We shall find out.
I came to know a lot of the troopers from West Virginia when we were up there because we did stuff together a lot. And there's not very many of them, and they're a wonderful group of law enforcement officers in West Virginia. Great people too. A lot of our troopers in Western Maryland, especially, were originally from West Virginia. Quite a few of them, because it was so hard to get on the West Virginia State Police.
Well, yeah, and the kind of the unique thing about our area, yours, Virginia, because I'm in Loudoun County. I used to live not too far from Steve. A lot of the folks that work here too, some of them actually live in West Virginia. They have to park their cars inside of Virginia, then they go home to West Virginia, or some of the folks in West Virginia go into Maryland. We just see a lot of these folks around here that live in one state and work in another just because of the proximity of it.
Yeah, that's. Yeah, I think when I was in the state police, I believe you had to live in Maryland in those days. I don't know if you still do or not, but
Who knows? Let me tell you what, it's getting harder and harder to find people. Maybe you can just commute in, fly in from the coast, and do your shift.
Probably.
Well, Maryland State Police was a very good outfit, and long tradition, 100 years last year, and it was a great outfit. I mean, I really enjoyed my time there. I spent 2 years and 8 months there, and in January in 1973, I went into the State Police Academy. I was 20 years old. I turned 21 in February of that year. And it's a 6-month residential. You must live there academy. And you're allowed to go home on the weekends if you don't have too many demerits. So I spent 5 of the weekends there. So.
And we're going to ask you about the memos you had to write when you went to DEA, because it sounds like you had to write a few. But we shall hold that. Don't say anything. Don't say anything. We want the magic to happen when we ask you the question. So, but now you did not go to college at this point. I know you went later, right? But at this point, you worked as a cadet, and then you went from being a cadet into the state police.
That is correct. I'll tell you, the LEAP program, which was the Law Enforcement Officers Assistance Program, is what put me through college. And it was a good college, Loyola College in Baltimore. And they put me through, and we had a fantastic lieutenant, Glorioso, who set all this up with Loyola College. And they would actually come to our headquarters building and teach the classes. I think my entire time I maybe took 1 or 2 courses on campus, but the rest of them were at the State Police Academy.
Wow.
And it took a while. I mean, about 5 years.
What'd you major in?
But sociology with a law enforcement option.
Why sociology?
Well, that was just one of the ones they offered, and it was kind of general, and I really didn't. I mean, that's the only things I've ever done in my life is I worked on a horse farm growing up the whole time up in Maryland, Vanderbilt's farm, where the owners of Under Armour own that property now. That was Vanderbilt property, right? Sagamore Farm. I worked there for a number of years, and I worked at a farm behind a number of years. So I shoveled a lot of horse manure in those years. Then I got in the state police,
and then you met Murph, and you had to shovel his horse manure.
A hell of a lot more.
I got DEA. That's the mother of shoveling horse manure. So, right. I mean, I didn't know how to do anything else. I mean, I didn't take shop or I did take metallurgy 1 year in high school, and I figured sooner or later to be able to get to college. And I did get a bunch of credits in the academy, the 6-month academy. We got a considerable amount of credits. I don't remember how many now, but then I got into the LEAP program, and I just hung in there, and finally got through it and graduated.
Well, let's talk about though getting onto the road. So it was a 6-month academy. So when you first got out, how do you get your choice of where to go, or is it at the pleasure of now, did you guys call it a colonel or a superintendent?
He was a colonel in rank, but both names were used. He was the superintendent of the Maryland State Police, but his rank was colonel, the only full bird colonel in the state police hierarchy. And then, they the state police decided where you went. You could put in dream requests, but they ultimately decided where you went.
So what was your first post? What was your first?
I wanted to get away from where I grew up. And, I wanted to go live in another place of the state. And they sent me to the same county I grew up in.
See, I got to tell you, I don't know the rationalization, because when I got on the state patrol, I was a city officer in Salina, Kansas, we had another guy that was in Olathe and another guy that was in Garden City. So they take the guy from Garden City, send him to Olathe. The guy from Olathe send him to Salina, and they take me and Salina and move me to Garden City. And I'm going, you could have just left me there. Oh no, 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 no. We, to your point, we want to move you away. We don't want you working with the same people. I was arresting everybody I knew anyway. I was a cop. It's like, yeah. Anyway, but as they say, it's at the pleasure of the state police or the state patrol, and the pleasure of the colonel. So the pleasure of the colonel, he sent you back to Baltimore.
He did. Well, Baltimore County. We don't really patrol or have any full-time offices in the city itself, but we do in the surrounding all 23 counties where we have a presence. And there's 23 counties in Maryland. We're in all of them. And this particular county, Baltimore County, where I grew up, had at the time 2 barracks, the Valley Barrack and the Randallstown Barrack. And I started out the Valley Barrack, and I really liked it there.
Where was that located at in relation to Baltimore?
Well, there's a road that runs through Baltimore. It's called Interstate 83. And then around Baltimore is a beltway called Interstate 695. And at the time, Valley Barrack, which was the name of it, was located in a complex of state offices. They had the State Roads Commission there, and I don't remember what else. And it was at the intersection of 695 and Interstate 83, that general area right there. And you have a beltway that goes around Baltimore. So that's predominantly you do that, but we were a full service state police, so we could also and did frequently handle criminal matters.
Now, did you guys do contract policing for smaller jurisdictions or cover any towns like that?
At that time, no. And when I was in uniform, no, but they since did that. I think I was still with them when they started doing that. Different municipalities would pay them and they would do that. But at that time when I was on the road, because I was on the road from Academy was January. I graduated in June. From June 1973 until April 1976, I was in uniform. And then I went into narcotics in April of 1976.
So let's talk a little bit. One thing I'm always fascinated in, and if you guys are listening to this, you have to be fascinated too because I'm asking the question. So let's talk about let's talk about the uniform because one of the things that's always distinctive. Every state agency wants to have their own look and everything, but so when you got out of the academy, your car and your equipment, what was the standard issue for the Maryland State Police at that point?
6-inch barrel, 38 specials that were probably used in the First World War. The one they gave me in the academy was great when we were doing single action. Then we go out to the outside range, and about every third round it would fire. It was really old.
And the ammo dumps too? Did you load them?
No, we had the 18 little loops.
Oh,
and we had, yeah, I know.
I thought we had ammo dumps at first. I thought that was bad, but yeah, loading them one at a time. That's like the Wild West.
Now you could be probably no, you could never even get by wearing an ammo dump box back in those days, and it was 158 grain copper coated lead. It would probably bounce off of a stick, but that's what they gave us. I mean, and I had a rather quickly. I mean, I was kind of really gung ho. It started when I was right out of high school. And every day I took all of my shirts to cleaners, and they were military pressed with medium starch. And we had collar ornaments. We had a badge, a shooting medal, and then all brass. We had a brass buckle, Sam Brown belt, brass belt keepers with little brass tabs on them, leather with brass tabs. And then you had your bullets. And every day I was in uniform, I polished every bullet, every button. You didn't polish your badge and you didn't polish your shooting medal. You did polish your nameplate and your collar ornaments and your belt buckle and keepers and bullets. So we had this guy, God rest his soul. He ended up retiring. He was a Green Beret in the reserves and died in a parachute accident after he died. But Dave Horan, he was about 6'4". He was huge. And he gave me the nickname The Rag because I carried around a little piece of terry cloth. If I touched anything, I would brush it off.
I thought I was OC.
You sound just like him.
Oh
my gosh! I apologize to our listeners. We got Morgan and Morgan Jr. on here today, I think.
Well, I was young, and new broom sweeps clean.
That's right, man. And I'll tell you what, it's a source of pride too, because you never know when you're going to have some sergeant was going to pull an inspection on you, and You never know when you might be called upon. A couple times I had to transport the governor, so your vehicle had to be spick and span, top to bottom. So, Steve, it was an awesome responsibility, something I know you're not accustomed to, but we were
I
used
guess,
to actually
yeah,
looking good and feeling good at the same time.
yeah, because that does make you a better police officer, doesn't it? When you got shiny stuff on your uniform.
Let me tell you what it makes. It makes these people know you got your shit squared away. Is because you mess with me, dude. I'm squared away from tip to toe. It's like they don't mess with you when you got a shiny uniform, when you got a
Hmm.
clean press uniform, a shiny badge, and a shiny car. You screw with
All
that,
right,
pal, you're going to
I'll
jail.
go with that with Lenny. You, not so much.
Well, back to our regularly scheduled podcast with Lenny. So, and the other thing too, I remember up until just about maybe 7, 8 years ago, all the Maryland State Police cars were still using low band radio, so they had that god awful 9 foot whip antenna
Yep,
on their
fishing
car.
rod.
Yeah, and those things got to whipping so bad. I saw a couple of the officers that assumed they were playing jokes. They would do what the truckers do. They took a tennis ball, cut a little hole in it, put it on top of their antenna, but that thing would whip back and forth.
Yeah, yeah,
Holy
that's what they
cow!
had, and then they went to sort of base mounted shorter ones after a couple of years when I was on. After they took away our traditional color, which was black and olive, and replaced it with yellow. We looked like a lemon riding around. Oh, it was horrible. Everybody hated it. Just
Look like
somebody decided to change a bright yellow. I still wrecked those cars, so it didn't help
everybody
stop
look out!
accidents.
Everybody look out! Here comes Big Bird.
Oh my God. I'm sorry. Yellow cars. Somebody confused you with the taxi. Hello, I need a ride home.
They were pretty bad. They really were.
I'm
But
sure.
now they've gone back to the traditional
Yes, they
colors.
have. They actually look pretty good. So, when you first started out, what's one of the first kind of big hairy ass calls you remember getting into?
Well, I hadn't been after you get out of the academy. Of course, you ride with a more senior trooper for a number of months or days. Or I don't remember how long it was, but I want to say it was. Well, I got out in June, so it was in just um, up there. I can remember things because of the difference in the weather, the time of the year. Can't do that here too much in Florida. But I remember it was starting to get a little cold. So I'm going to say it was September, maybe October. So I was by myself, but I hadn't been cut loose all that long, but a while. And I saw this guy with Texas plates uh, weaving a little bit. So I said, what's the matter with him? So I pulled him over, and I forget. I think he was drinking, and then I smelled some marijuana in the car. So I got him out and handcuffed him. After I get him and arrested him for driving under the influence, and I think he had a couple joints or something in the ashtray, and popped him for that. So I had him handcuffed, no problem. I find a gun under the seat, revolver. So I call into that, and then I'm just waiting to call for a tow truck, and I'm waiting for the tow truck to get there, and I'm going to take him to the barrack and offer him a sobriety test, breathalyzer. And so then before he gets there, I said, well, let me make an inventory of what's in the trunk. So it says Texas plates. I open up the trunk, and it's completely, absolutely stuffed with marijuana.
Personal
He
use.
was he was transporting marijuana
It's
somewhere.
just personal use
He
to
had
get him
bags.
from Texas up to Maryland.
So that was kind of cool. And I
Did he
remember
have
my
did he
corp.
have a medical marijuana card? That's all I want to.
They didn't. That wasn't around back in those days.
Yeah, I got a trunk full of the stuff. Well, I think long term, I'm a prepper, so I need a few years worth just in case I get stuck in the mountains. So, but is that because obviously we're going to talk later about getting into DEA, and you said later, we got on state police, you work narcotics. When did the narcotics bug hit? When did you decide I like working dope?
Well, when I was a cadet, we had a very well-known commander of the narcotics section. He ended up being a lieutenant colonel when he retired, Frank Mazzone. And Frank was well known. He really, in the 60s and 70s, just really did a great job with the narcotics section of the Maryland State Police. And his brother was also a trooper who also ended up being a lieutenant colonel. And he was a friend of mine. He was a year older than me, but he was a friend of mine. And he and I went down to a place called Ocean City, Maryland, which is loaded with people. I mean, just it's unbelievably packed in the summer. And we did a little undercover stuff down there when we were cadets. Because we were so young, nobody would think we were cops, and we were able to help effectuate a couple of arrests. So that was kind of cool. And I kind of liked that, and I thought it was neat. But I still like, I liked after that was before I went through the academy, and then I got out, and I liked all the pomp and circumstance of saluting and the cars, nice cars, and the chases, and the adrenaline really rolls when you get an armed robbery in progress and you're 21 years old, and you say, "I hope I can talk when I get there." You're so scared, but you do it anyway because that's the way you're trained and that's what you committed your life to doing. So we've had stuff like that, and then probably the real kicker was, and I won't go into any names or too much detail, but there was a couple ladies that worked in one of the courts that I frequented, and they were really nice. They were the clerks and stuff, and they were related. And one day I was there, I had a case, and I was waiting for the proceedings to begin. And the one lady got a phone call from one of her children, said couldn't wake up the other child. So they asked me if I could give her a ride, and I said, "Well, to home." She didn't have a car. I said, "Well, certainly, as long as the judge says it's okay." So when I see the judge, he said, "Yeah." So we get in the car, and I'm not thinking anything. This child was 15 or 16, I guess. And on the way up, this clerk asked me, "Well, is there any type of drug that could cause this?" Of course, I had to say, "Yeah." "Well, I think my child's using drugs." So I called for an ambulance to meet us there, and then we went code 3, license siren, and we got there, and the ambulance crew was standing on the porch and with very somber looks on her face. Make a long story short, I took her home to find her daughter dead from a drug overdose, and I kind of just that really bothered me. I was probably 22, so
Do you know
time
what kind of drugs
maybe.
it was?
I don't remember now. It's been so long. But I had to stay there, and the medical examiner came and all that. And I kind of told myself, well, you know what? If I were to do this for the rest of my career and I stopped one family from going through this, it would be worth it. And that's, I mean, it might sound corny, but it's the truth. And that's really the way I felt. And so when I had an opportunity, I got into narcotics in April 1976.
What did you have to do to move off the road into narcotics? Did they do any kind of testing or evaluations, or you just put in for it?
You put in for it, and then they would interview if they wanted. But the director knew, or one of the directors knew me from working with his brother, and I had made a lot of narcotic arrests at the barrack as a uniform guy. I locked up a lot of people for drugs on the road and different things. So I kind of had that going for me, and they brought me in.
What was marijuana the biggest drug during that time, or did you run into some other stuff?
Oh no, marijuana was probably one of the lessers. Cocaine and heroin, LSD. I remember one time, one of my first undercover operations. We'd just go hang out. Just go hang out in an area and make friends. Usually you'd have an informant to introduce you, like his cousin that just moved back, or some story you come up with. And they were selling capsules that they called THC, which stands for tetrahydrocannabinol, the active ingredient marijuana. And in reality, when we sent them to the lab, what they were was, if you remember back in those days, phencyclidine, PCP,
Mm.
Yeah.
which is a horrible drug. And they didn't even know what they were taking. Just like this stuff they're doing with fentanyl today. I mean, people don't even know they're taking fentanyl and then they're dying. So that used to happen. That, and I bought some LSD. I bought mushrooms. I held a guy's arm while he fired heroin going up 270 one time.
Now, wait a minute. Say that again.
Yeah.
One time I met some people in Frederick, Maryland. We went down to Washington D.C. and bought heroin. They actually had to go in and get it. They wouldn't sell it to me. I didn't know these guys. I'd met them. I had an informant in the car, but there's two other guys I met that he knew, and we all hung out. And then we went down to D.C. and bought heroin. And coming back up, he wanted to do it. And he's sitting in the seat next to me, so I held his arm while he fired the heroin into his arm.
Ugh.
He had a needle with him, and he passed out. I said, "Wow!" I was hoping he's not dead, but
That's
he
dear
wasn't. He
Colonel.
came
Nobody
back.
was more surprised than me when
He went on the nod. Yeah, they all
Yeah, he
do
went on
that.
that. He did
Yeah.
it on a. So they went to jail later. They sold me the heroin.
did you because right now you look like the lawyer type that you are. You didn't were you when you were working narcotics, did you work plain clothes as just a trooper? I mean, looking like a detective, or did you actually work undercover? Did you grow your hair out, look
Oh no,
scroungy, or
no, no,
what?
no! I had the bell bottom pants, the fluffy sleeves. I had a mood ring. I had an earring, and if I let my hair like grow down to here, down back to my nose, I look like a poodle. The longer my hair gets, the more it curls up. I used to get stopped all the time by the police because I had a big Fu Manchu mustache
Look like a poodle. That's
and big
funny.
buggy eyes, and my hair was like out to here. It was unbelievable. I mean, it was I looked like a poodle, real curly. It curls up. I had a friend. A friend of mine that ultimately came to DEA and retired. And I just saw him last week. His name is Frank Rose. He retired from DEA as a pilot. And Frank came in there. We worked in uniform together, and we went into narcotics at the same time together. And Frank did not cut his hair or shave his beard for 6 years. People would give him drugs; they were so afraid of him. So I mean, it was a different time back in those days. And I'd go up. They'd send me. I was on after I got in. They'd sent me to Western Maryland or some other part of the state, and I'd stay in a cheap hotel because they didn't give you much money.
Oh, no.
Uh,
And you had to
and
account, you had to have receipts for your dinner
oh
and
yeah,
your
for
food. Yeah.
everything, everything. And then they would say, "Okay, just call once a day so we know you're alive." So that was it. I mean, things that DEA would never in 1,000 years do, but that's just the way they did it back then.
We were tougher. Troopers were tougher. We didn't need all this fancy hand holding. By God, one trooper, one riot, one ranger, that's all it took, right?
That's
Hey,
who
here's a
that's who I call every time I have a flat tire is a trooper.
yes, it is. And then when they
Well,
find all the
Kansas
dope in
City.
your car, yeah, yeah, Kansas, yeah. Hey, by the way, here's a little factoid. Here's a little trivia. During the 1990s, do you know where almost all of the world's LSD came from?
I do not.
A missile silo in Wamego, Kansas, not too far from where I grew up as a Ute. I was born at Fort Riley. So during the 1990s, these guys converted an old Atlas missile silo, a Cold War Atlas E missile silo. The guy made some money. He turned it into an LSD factory. So this is almost like Breaking Bad. You know, all the meth come. So in fact, it came on blotters that had a picture of looked like a naked woman on a bicycle, the mountains in the background. It said 1943 on the bottom because that's when some of those started being built. So it was like
I'll be
there's just
darned.
an interesting factoid for you. Little Kansas, can you believe that? Just in those missile silos, they were all over the place. People forget they were. We used to find the concrete pads where they capped them and did stuff like that, but they were all over Kansas because it's the middle of the United States, and if the Russians
Sure.
ever attacked, we could fire back.
Yeah, that's amazing. No, I did not know that. Did they ultimately catch the guy, or was it just years later they
Oh
found
no, no,
out?
no! They caught him when it was going on. They ended up making the case, but basically, this guy had like 40,000 bucks. He did some remodeling, and all of a sudden, he brought another guy in, and they said, "Hey, we could make LSD." And pretty soon, you know, really during the 90s, the majority of the LSD in the world was coming. And I did not know this at the time because they never really said anything about it, until later. So anyway, I digress. Back to our regularly scheduled podcast. There, just an
It's
aside.
always about Kansas with you. What's up with that?
Well, hey, I'm a Kansas
Oh,
farm boy. You talked about being a farm boy, Lenny. It's like, you know what it's like. You grew up on a farm, you do good stuff, you work on a farm. So,
yeah. The
um,
difference is the difference is we're interviewing Lenny, not Morgan. Hey, by the way, I did find out Lee Ermey was born in Emporia, Kansas,
there you go, Lyons County.
1944.
Oh, he was fantastic, wasn't he?
He was
What a
excellent,
show Full Metal
excellent.
Jacket was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to this day, when I smell horse manure, it still smells good to me. I mean, I shoveled so
Oh
much of
my
it.
gosh! What
Oh, I mean, the first thing you'd do at 6 o'clock in the morning, you'd have X amount of stalls you'd have to clean, and then you'd, muck them out and put the muck in there, and then you go spread the muck. And, I mean, it never hurt me
oh,
that I know of anyway. But I had a horse growing up. I mean, I loved all this stuff, hunting, fishing. And I actually went to Kansas once on a quail hunt with my now deceased father-in-law, and it was beautiful. Gosh, it was really
Do you
nice.
remember where you went?
No, we flew into Kansas City and we drove a couple hours from there, but I don't remember now.
Okay,
It's
yeah,
been
because
so
there's,
long
I
ago.
mean, after the first Gulf War,
Uh,
Schwarzkopf came out to Scott County, Kansas. Beautiful pheasant hunting out there when pheasant season starts, in November. Some of the best pheasant hunting, in the United States. And we actually had a chance to run into and meet the general while he was out there doing the same thing. But
oh, cool.
that's because they got Milo fields, after they cut those down in cornfields and wheat fields, those pheasant, quail, everything. They love that kind of stuff.
Well, my father-in-law loved quail hunting. He was originally he's from Mississippi, World War II vet. Great guy, great patriot, and he's gone now. But he loved quail hunting more than anything, and he liked the fish and everything too. But he loved quail hunting, so we went out there quail hunting. I started with him actually. We went to South Dakota, and that started me on a trek for 16 straight years. I went to South Dakota pheasant hunting every October,
wow!
Wow.
and pheasant hunting is just great. We fly into Sioux Falls and then drive about hour and a half, 2 hours to a place. Stay the same place all but all but one of the years. stay the same place, and it was great. I'm getting a little old now, and the walking doesn't agree with me as much as it used
Well,
to. I
now
got
you
a
can
new
just go
knee.
down to the water's edge and, go hunt gators.
Yeah, I'm on a hunting lease actually here. It's 2.5 hours from where I live, 175 miles from where I live, but it's west of Melbourne, and it's Deseret Ranch, it's called, and we have a 9,000-acre ranch lease there, and we hunt deer and wild turkey and wild hogs, a lot of wild hogs and coyotes.
After you and I had our phone call, I looked that up. That does look like a pretty decent place.
Oh, it's huge. I mean, no, our lease is almost 9,000 acres.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew a bunch of DEA agents that hunted wild turkey too. Unfortunately for them, they always found it in the bar. You know?
Yeah, when I was in Colombia with DEA, I got into Scotch, so I got away from that. That's so
Got away
I'm
from that.
saved.
Anyway,
Yeah, I
back
got
to our
single malt Scotch now.
yeah, back to our regularly scheduled podcast. So you were working dope, um, and you started doing these things, but you were on the road. You were at Maryland State Police. You said for 11 years, right?
A total, counting my cadet time, from August 1970 until the end of actually January 1981.
Did you during that time? Obviously, you worked some cases with DEA.
Not so much, not so much. No, I mean I knew a bunch of those guys, and I got to know them, and I liked them, and they helped me out on a couple things that I was looking at, but it just didn't. There wasn't a tremendous amount of joining of forces in those days. We worked some with some of the county police departments, and we had different teams. The state was kind of divided up, and I was on the western team for a while, and didn't really work with anyone there other than I worked with some guys from the attorney general's office one time, of Maryland, but they were troopers, a different thing. And then we would work with the county police after I got on the Baltimore team, Baltimore County a lot police, because they have a huge police department. Their police department was as big as the state police. And then the Anne Arundel County Police, I worked a real nice case with them, but I think I was with DEA when I worked with them at that point.
So what made you then? So talk to us about your transition then from the state police. What gave you the bug? Because you got 10 years in. I mean, 8 years technically is a full time, full sworn, but you got the. So what gave you the bug? What made you decide? Hey, I want to go to the
Well,
feds.
I didn't just like buying drugs from small time dealers and letting it go. I knew there was a lot more to it. I mean, I knew there were people who were organizing this and who were trafficking in drugs on a major scale internationally, and that borders and boundaries didn't mean anything to them. And you have a limited ability in the state police. We had a couple of nice cases they weren't my cases. I just participated in them, and they followed some guys to Florida and we ultimately ended up with a couple tons of marijuana, and that was a lot in the 70s. And and then there were some other people that would pop up. I had one guy that I ended up doing a court authorized state police wiretap on, but I never got enough to get him, and he was flying all over the country, Holland, Greece, Italy, South America, and he ultimately died of a cocaine overdose or a drug overdose of some sort or another in Greece. So I mean, all this stuff was going on, and I just didn't really. I mean, I felt like we were limited. And one of the things the state police did, and I'm sure you'll remember this, Morgan, and you too, Steve, is upper level management always has a varied set of tools that they use to make sure that you are totally 1,000% compliant. And the state police, if anything at all happened and you would disagree with it in the narcotics section, it says, "Well, I'm sorry, maybe we can find a radar gun to fit your hand." And that would like be a constant threat over your head. And we had been in there, and we had this kind of stuff we did, and the experiences we had. Not too, once some guys would want to go back, but I did not want to go back to uniform. I just didn't, and I worked and got my college degree, and then I applied to DEA, and
At what point through your Maryland State Police career did you finally finish up your bachelor's degree? Was that towards the end when you were leaving, or
yes,
did you do it like in the middle?
like 2 years before I left, I think, 'cause it took about 2 years to get hired by
Okay.
DEA.
Yeah, because I did the same thing too. Actually, while I was working, I went back and got two more degrees. And so balancing kids, juggling schedules and doing stuff, it takes a lot to go, do that kind of stuff. And
Well, I didn't know whether DEA was going to hire me, so I also took the LSAT, which is a law school acceptance test. And I figured, well, if that doesn't work, I just didn't. I was really starting to grow a little weary of the threats put you back in uniform or whatever. And really, as a narcotic detective at that time, it's different now. It wasn't much in terms of doing cases that took your brains, like long-term involved historical conspiracies. Yeah, we did wiretaps and things like that, but the conspiracy statutes in the state of Florida were kind of ridiculous, um, in my opinion. This
You
is my
mean
opinion. Yeah, I
Maryland?
mean Maryland. Yeah, in Maryland, because
But they're probably ridiculous in Florida too, huh?
nah,
Probably.
Florida's a little more law and order state. I mean, Maryland is so left, it's crazy how left it is. And I'm
When I
not.
was still living there in Northern Virginia, it seemed like it really went off to the left.
Yeah. So I mean, and you're limited. You're going to get old. You're not going to be able, or maybe you could get promoted, but you're going to have to leave if you get promoted. I really like that kind of work, and I really, I did a couple of the best that I could do in Maryland. I know one time we had a group that was going around and getting dilaudid from dentists, faking TMJ. The guy he had TMJ, I guess. He clicked his jaw, and he was, I mean, just hitting. So, I mean, you could throw a pin at a map around the Baltimore area, and he was hitting dentists several a day. And I got the county, Baltimore County, interested, and we ended up indicting. But my gosh, I think he had, like, I don't know, 50 or 60 counts, and I had this ream of warrants. Nothing got tied together. I mean, it just didn't lend itself to that in those days. Maybe it's different now. I don't know. But to me, the greatest tool that we had in the narcotic section was the federal conspiracy statutes. Um, and historical conspiracies are what's taken down every major criminal organization, for the most part, not every, but for most of them, vast majority of them, than anything else, because it's just such a great tool.
Well,
Yeah.
and when I was going through training, even some of the DEA stuff and some of the other folks, got some history on that, and it was like I'm not sure if it was like maybe New York, but somebody started finally realizing, like maybe mid '60s, that hey, the conspiracy to do X is actually the same penalty for actually doing X.
Hmm.
So conspiracy to traffic, conspiracy to commit robbery. So it's like we don't have to have the dope all the time to make a case.
And that goes back to what I was saying. I knew there were people controlling this, and you're not going to catch them with the drugs in their hands. We tried that once. We had a case I had in DEA in Baltimore. We tried that, trying buying our way up. We spent 50 grand, and we got like one level higher. And back then, I mean, not even now, it's a lot of money, but it's nothing. It's nothing to these people. That kind of money, it's absolutely nothing to a major drug trafficker. And I mean, he'll spend that in a long weekend partying somewhere. Uh, and you didn't really have the tools to be able to do it in the state police, and pretty much you didn't have the mindset of the supervision either. They had their marching orders from those above them, and the stuff that had the greatest impact immediately is what they really had to do to keep everyone happy. And it's understandable. I mean, because some of these cases you might go through. I had cases in DA 3-4 years before they come to fruition.
But yeah, but see, that's the difference. You said, at the state level stuff, when they're concerned about statistics and dealing with the legislature and getting budget, and you're having to turn and burn, it's like, we
Sure, you
didn't
gotta have
have,
stats.
yeah, they didn't, there were no such thing. People always say, well, you have a quota. No, we didn't have a quota, but, considering the amount of traffic out there, it was expected that you could write a certain amount of tickets and check a certain amount of trucks and arrest a certain amount, of drunk drivers. You get some people, they'd come in for a whole day and they'd have nothing or maybe one warning. You're going, come on, pal. You got cars just, you can throw a stone and hit 20 traffic violations.
I had one guy, a friend of mine, state police, pulled on the side of Interstate 695 and turned his flashing, blue and red light on, and worked radar. He got a bunch of people just to see how it would
Well,
work.
there you go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was getting them right and left. He's sitting there with a red light on, and and he got them. So
Let me tell you, if you've seen somebody, I just coming back from Tyson's Corner today, and just seeing the people that are out there that have just no awareness. They drive like now, like they did, 30 years ago. But anyway, we digress here. So getting back to that. So, you put in, you said you did the LSAT. Did you put in for anything else? Cause you said you were enamored by the FBI. Did you apply for the Bureau?
oh no, I was never enamored by them. No.
By their building. The building.
No, I
here we go. Okay.
I mean,
Well, you said you were enamored.
as a
You
child,
visited the FBI.
as a child.
Okay.
And then,
No, he said he was hammered. He'd been in the bar and he came out. He was
Been
hammered.
hammered.
I didn't really, once I was in law enforcement now, I had almost 11 years in at this point, and I was thinking, I ran across some FBI agents and talked to them, and it seemed like that they were pretty well restrained in what they could do as well. Uh, they didn't get much freedom, and DEA, when I first came to DEA in 1981, I know several of them guys who left the FBI to come to DEA. We had people leaving every law enforcement job you can imagine to come to DEA. It was just unbelievable. In the early years of Reagan, when he was president, and that whole time frame, and it was just amazing. I mean, what you could do, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, the grand jury, we never did an investigative grand jury that I ever recall. I mean, maybe they did it somewhere else, but I never did it in the state system. But I got onto that, and some of the older agents in Baltimore who were really good at it, and that is exactly what I wanted to do. And man, the FBI is a great outfit. I'm not knocking them; they do good work, but it just didn't seem to
That
me.
wasn't your cup of tea.
No, I didn't. I don't want to see who's taking the Russian books out of the library. I mean, you know.
Камера очень приятно товарищ по-русски. Yeah,
Yeah, your mama too.
Yeah, that's yours too.
Speak Russian.
So,
Oh wow, cool.
Russian, yeah, немного. But going back to that though, you said you took the LSAT. Why would you want to be a lawyer at that point? What kind of lawyer? And if you did, what kind of lawyer were you trying to be?
Well, I really hadn't progressed that far along, but once you get a piece of paper from an institution of higher learning, no one can ever take that away from you. And if you got your Juris Doctorate, it's yours forever, unless you do something that or did something dishonest to get it or whatever. And I guess all the to keep you in line threats. I remember thinking to myself, I could make somebody angry. Maybe I'm totally innocent, and they could take all this away from me. And I
Doesn't
didn't like
matter
that.
because they do it because they have the power. I used to work for somebody like that. I won't mention where, but they were like, they always kind of threaten you with the job. And it's like, look, pal, I was looking for a job when I came here.
Mhm.
Let's stop with it. And you know what? That's bad. That's those people are managers. They're not leaders. They're managers. And there's a difference between being a manager and a leader. But so thank God you didn't become an attorney at that time.
Well, there's a lot of great attorneys, trust me, and not every
I'm just saying.
not every attorney.
I'm just talking about at that time.
Is a bleeding liberal. There's a lot of real conservative.
So we can't do lawyer jokes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, you can. I do it all the time. I have a number of lawyer jokes, but they would not be fit for a podcast.
Oh, dude, we talk about everything. What's the difference? What's brown and black and looks good on a lawyer? Doberman.
Oh, okay.
Art, thank you very much.
You know why lawyers wear ties?
To keep the foreskin from slipping over their heads. I got all of these. What's it? Okay, here's one. No, I won't say that one. That one, I'll tell you offline. Anyway, but back to our regularly scheduled podcast here. So, you put in for DEA. Did you get hired right away? Was there a freeze? Did you have to wait?
No, it took me two cycles to get hired. First time I didn't get picked up. The second time I did, and hear this. So they do my background, and I get a letter. Congratulations, you're going to be in the next class. And I'm happy. I haven't actually got the orders to report, but I'm told, everything's done. You've passed. You'll be in the next class. And then it was at the end of December, around Christmas time. It's probably before Christmas. I get a letter from them. Well, due to minority hiring constraints, you won't be in this class. You'll be in another class. All right. Well, and the state police people, because they went into my office and interviewed, a bunch of people and all that, I could see what the writing on the wall. They transferred me to the furthest part in narcotics over to the D.C. team. I lived in Baltimore. I mean, Western Maryland, Baltimore metropolitan area, or Northern Maryland was all right there. The Eastern Shore, they didn't have enough spots, so they probably would have sent me down there. So they sent me to the D.C. team, which meant I'm going to have to move. And I could tell just from the temperature in the room that I was viewed as disloyal. And that was a big deal to them. So then I go to lunch a couple days after Christmas, and they call me on the radio. There were no pagers or cell phones or any of that back at that time. And said, call DEA. They call me on the radio. So I call down DEA and says, "Do you still want the job?" I go, "Yeah." He says, "Well, we had 2 people didn't show up this morning. Come down now and get sworn in." So I drove down to the federal building in downtown Baltimore, went in, got sworn in, and I was in the next class. I was sworn in as a special agent with the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. And then I get back to the office, and we had this little redheaded 4-letter word of a supervisor. He was just an idiot. And he starts screaming at me for taking a couple hours for lunch. And I said, "Time out. Hold on. Hold on. What do you mean?
Hold on,
Hold on."
Skippy.
He's screaming at me. "What do you mean? Hold on." I said, "Before you say anything else, I quit." I was down getting sworn in as an agent. He got so mad, he went in his office and kicked his trash can across the room, grabbed his coat, and left. So that tells you where he was.
Somebody doesn't play. Yeah, Timmy doesn't play well with others. He takes his toys and goes home.
So every time I saw him after that, I just started laughing at him as soon as I saw him. And then I left and went to DEA.
But how many of us would love to be able to do what you got to do that day? Hey, Buckwheat, shut the hell up.
that little pain in the ass. You'd write a report, and we typed them in rough. He put big red marks on it and change it. So you keep them, and this one just me. It was like everybody. And he'd write the next report the way he changed it. He put big red marks and changed it back the way he had it the first time.
Oh,
he was just a pain in the ass.
You run into people like that. They do it simply because they can. These people who've never had power or leadership before, they do it simply because they can. And those are the worst kind of people.
But that I had proven myself disloyal, and so I was pretty much persona non grata. So thank goodness DEA did pick me up, and there were several people in my class that happened to. But guys that were supposed to show up to be sworn in just didn't show up. They don't fill them, they lose them.
Hey, sucks to be them. You got to fill slots. So, hey, look, you know what they call the guy who graduated at the bottom of his class in medical school?
Doctor.
It doesn't matter, man. You got top or bottom, you're in the class. So now you're in the class. But let's talk about getting into DEA now. So when you got on, where was the academy at? They're in DC, or did you go in Washington?
It was in Washington, 1405 I Street, the old headquarters. We were the last class they had there. I was in DEA Basic Agents class number 17.
Wasn't there a strip club in the first floor of that building?
I think it was a strip club after a certain hour. It was called the Golden Eagle. It was a bar up until a certain hour. I don't know if they might have stopped the stripping. We weren't allowed in there. We couldn't even walk in the place.
And you know what? At the DEA Academy now, what's the name of the evening bar they have there?
Is it like
the Golden Eagle?
Oh, is it? Okay.
It's the Golden Eagle.
Now, I've only been to Quantico with DEA one time for a retirement seminar. It's like being in a gerbil cage.
Leave it to DEA to cut your travel time down to the strip clubs by simply just bringing it right there to the academy. Way to go, guys!
We weren't allowed. I mean, if we set foot in there, we were toast.
Well, that way, if you're up all night, you can crawl up to your desk. You can work the next day.
We stayed at Seven Corners. That's where we had some apartments, long-term apartments, and we stayed there. So it was a drive, even with subway and buses.
Well, with having it down there, how did you guys do where did you guys do your PT and your shooting and stuff like that?
Well, they had a gym right next door to it, so we run up and down the steps. It was narrow, but it was tall, and it had a full-size basketball court, so that was enough to do the PT. And then our shooting, we had a range over that used to belong to another government agency that was very, you'd never know it was there, over right at the edge of Georgetown, indoor range. We did our indoor stuff there, then we did our outdoor stuff down at Quantico.
Man, you guys had to go all over the place.
We did. It's a great school, though. It really was a good school. I really enjoyed it.
What year was that? That was 1980?
1981.
81.
Yeah, and that was the war on drugs, Reagan, things were picking up. I mean, I remember, hearing him talk about it and, seeing just the difference, in fact, it was funny you mentioned that. One of the guests we had on earlier, Jeff Sandy, by the way, Steve, I will be in, when you guys hear this podcast, it'll be past that, but I'll be in Charleston, West Virginia tomorrow. I called Jeff. Jeff and Tom are going to take me out to an early lunch tomorrow in Charleston.
Cool. Very cool.
So Jeff Sandy was an IRS agent. And but one of his claims to fame was during the presidential campaign. Nancy Reagan got to like him so much she asked him. So for 6 months, he was assigned to the presidential
Oh, wow.
detail everywhere they went. Yeah, and that was about the same time too. So, but anyway, but you get on, and so uh, again, now I saved my question till now. So you got in trouble before. You had to do stuff. You had to do. How many memos did you have to write at DEA Academy?
At the academy, I didn't get in any trouble in the DEA Academy. I got in trouble, not trouble, but I got the demerits and stuff in State Police Academy. But DEA, I don't remember getting in
You
any trouble.
straightened up and flew, right? Are you
Yeah,
kidding?
it was ridiculous. It was shocking me too. In fact, they elected me. I gave the speech, the commencement speech when we graduated.
Oh, cool. Very good.
No,
That's
they
a position of
they
honor.
were throwing people out in that DEA Academy quick. So you didn't really want to mess up.
Wow.
No, I didn't get in
How
any
many
trouble
people
in DEA
graduated?
school. If I remember correctly, I think it was 37.
Do you remember how many you started with?
No, it was 5 or 6 that got tossed.
Wow.
So yeah, I don't remember the
Wow.
exact amount, but it was 5 or 6.
Not bad.
right
I was
around
just one of my friends has a son who graduated from the New Jersey State Police Academy, a couple years ago and stuff. But so I've been following their page. They just graduated their latest class, but they started off with, I think it was 210 and only graduated 134.
Wow. I heard
Yeah.
that's a tough academy. Very tough
Dang.
academy.
New Jersey State Police, man. I'll tell you what, that's they're one of the toughest academies. Now, okay, so you were straighten up and fly, right? You were a teacher's pet, obviously, in the academy, but did you get to pick? Did you get to put in where you wanted to be posted?
Yeah, you could put in, but of course, again, you serve at
Of
the
course,
pleasure.
you're going to go right back to Baltimore.
So this is great. I want to get away from Maryland. I've spent my whole life here. It's a big country. I think I put in Miami, Atlanta, and Houston or
Now, hold on.
something.
And where did you get posted?
Baltimore. They said, "Congratulations, we're sending you home." Oh, thank you very much.
When you went to Baltimore, was there an agent there named Basil Santos?
Yes, I knew Basil. I knew Basil before I got hired by DEA. I was
Oh,
there
really?
in the meeting the day he jumped on the sword and ended up in Charleston, West Virginia.
Yep, and that's where I hired on. That's where I first met him.
Oh my! He died. Basil died.
Yeah, I heard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
You know who else was a Baltimore city cop?
Who? Oh, yeah, Michelle Lenhart.
Michelle Lenhart was in my class. She's
Oh, no
She was
kidding.
in your class?
She was. I think.
You know what? I want you to know something. She's in there under fraudulent circumstances. She poofed her hair to become 5'4" because she was 5'3 3/4. She goes, I poofed my hair being from Fargo, go Bears. She poofed her hair so she could be 5'4".
I thought she was from Minnesota.
She was.
Well, that's where she
but
grew up.
You have to. That's where she grew up. But you have to. You have to listen to the episode. Damn it! Steve. Don't you have our people listen to all of our episodes before we have them on?
Hey, and it's Lenny. You'd love it. I mean, she was an innocent little girl that grew up there in Minnesota, and it's just her
Oofta.
story is
Oh, yeah.
fascinating.
What a nice lady. I mean, she was just a tremendous lady in
Outstanding.
school. She got picked as one of the outstanding students. Her and a guy named Larry Sproat, who's a good friend of mine.
Larry Sproat, yeah.
You know Larry? He was in Atlanta. Great guy, Vietnam
Yeah.
vet. Went all over Indonesia and Asia, and he's just a fantastic guy. We're still friends, but I haven't talked to him in a long time.
She talked about applying like 20 different places, and Baltimore hired her. And to get on Baltimore, she had to be 5'4". So she poofed her hair out that extra quarter of an inch, and that's how the legend started. Hey, well, there you go. We just tied that together. So Michelle Lenhart, and now you, Lenny Athas, both out of the same class.
Yeah, she was.
And you didn't become administrator.
No. Oh well.
Well, thanks. I didn't either, and I'm glad I didn't.
Look, that comes with a whole set of headaches too, man.
Oh my gosh.
That's when it gets political. You're not DEA anymore. You're a political appointee. But anyway, as we go back to, so you put in for all those things. So you got Baltimore.
I did.
So
I did 6 years there when I got back.
wait a minute. It sounds like you're doing prison time instead of I spent 6 years. I did 6 years there. I did 6 years on the inside in Baltimore.
Hey, you've been to Baltimore. You know what it's like.
Oh my God. First time when we moved out there, we moved out to Virginia in 2000. I was commuting back and forth for 6 months, but we moved out. And my middle son moved out with me, divorced and remarried. So kid from a previous marriage. And then my daughter, we decided we wanted to go hang out at the Inner Harbor. We'd never been there before, heard things about it. We go there. we do no more than get there, walk around the corner, and basically we're mobbed by like five homeless people, and my daughter clung to my leg the whole time. And it's like, yeah, we're, but I tell you, that's the scaredest I think I was, and believe it or not, I was the 2012, we did the inaugural Pennsylvania ride for Law Enforcement United. So every police week, you get Police Unity Tour and Law Enforcement United. We'd ride our bikes into DC. So we started in Reading, PA, and came down through, and we were coming through Baltimore. And I'm asking these guys, why the fuck are we coming through Baltimore? We're on bikes. We've got motorcycles in front of us, escorting us. They know we're a bunch of cops, and we're going through this one area. And I'm looking at these row houses going, there's a motherfucking sniper up there. I can see. We were like pedal, and the streets were so bad. I think probably three people got flat tires or broke their rim just trying to pedal and get the hell out of Baltimore there.
Well, when I was in the state police, we used to have this one bar downtown. We were all single and everything. Narcotics. We'd all go to it on a Friday night. Well, one of our guys got robbed at gunpoint there one night going down there. And then at the time, Mayor William Donald Schaefer was redoing Baltimore. He took areas that were just horribly depressed areas, and the city bought all the houses and land, and they would sell you a house for $1. You couldn't be a developer, you couldn't be a builder or anything like that. It had to be for your personal use, and you had to sign documents that you lived there so long, and you put X amount of money in rehabilitating the house. And he turned that city. It was wonderful when I left in 1986. I didn't come back until the 90s for trial to that area. I mean, I came back to see my parents that lived up there at the time, but they were in the county, way up in the county. And I came back. It was in the fall of the year. I had to testify at a sentencing in federal court. And I flew in. I stayed at the Hilton. Right down Hopkins Plaza was where our office was, and it was great. They had a theater for performing arts there.
Is that down by Johns Hopkins and the university or the hospital there?
No.
Is that why they called Hopkins? Okay,
No,
different
I don't
area.
know why I really don't know why they called House Plaza, but they had a big bank building. They had a big federal building there, and DEA's office was in there as well as ATF and IRS. Then, so they had a theater for performing arts there. They had restaurants and little bar and everything, and it was just great. And I saw Lucille Ball in the bar right next to the theater for performing arts one time. I didn't talk to her, but it was just neat. I mean, it was great. I went to stuff there occasionally, and when I came back in the 90s, the theater was all boarded up. All the restaurants and bars were closed and boarded up. There was graffiti, homeless people sleeping everywhere. I remember just my mouth dropping. I couldn't believe what had happened. And then people were telling me, oh, no, now everybody's over on the other side over there. There's a place called Federal Hill. That's where everybody is now, whatever. But what happened to this? It was great. There wasn't any reason for it to be like that. And it was really a dramatic change. And then and it's just kept getting worse. I don't know what happened, but it's a mess now.
I like that. I like the Inner Harbor area down there with all the different sites and the aquarium, and you got the ball fields not too far away.
I
I
just
like
read
that
something
area.
it closed. I heard the Inner Harbor's closed. All the businesses went out. They had any kind of restaurants you could think of there: Italian, seafood, Greek, Chinese. I mean, Asian. I mean, just it was great, great, great. But I don't know what happened.
Yeah, between COVID and then, like you say, it only takes a little hit for some of those places, and plus with all the other stuff, the crime down there just got bad. I mean, you'd read stories of people just getting shot, killed, mugged. Just it was like it kind of reached a point too to where it's like we're just never coming back here again because to your point, it's just too dangerous. But anyway, let's get back to something fun. So while you're in Baltimore. Now, you've tried to escape. This is like Kurt Russell's Snake Plissken, Escape from New York. You've tried to escape Baltimore several times, and yet here we are again. So, what did you do, though? I mean, it's when you got there, because not only did you work it, from a state police standpoint, working the road, and then you worked it from a narcotics standpoint, and you saw the cases. What was the biggest change between what you were doing then and what you're doing now that made the job so much different?
The types of cases. I mean, just the cases. I remember talking to some other cops in DEA school, and I remember us saying, because DEA pays better. That well, we're not going to have the kind of work like we used to have when we were, detectives, but at least we're going to be making a little bit more money, and we can travel a little bit. It'll be nicer. Boy, I couldn't have been more wrong had I planned to be. You had as much work to do in DEA as you wanted to do, and the cases the sky was the limit with them. And the first case I made, I won't bore you with all the details, but basically what it involved was a group of people from the Baltimore area who were traveling to Colombia, and they were buying cocaine, and they were had a source down there that had a press, and they would take buy children's books and take the cardboard backing out of it, put cocaine in its place, and then reseal it, and it just looked like a regular book.
Now, hold on a second, because we don't want to make sure we don't mix people up. There is a Columbia, Maryland, and then there's the country of Columbia.
The
So when you
country
say
of Colombia,
Columbia, are you
the
okay? All right.
Republic of
Because
Colombia.
I'm thinking it makes it economical. You just try to have to drive down to Columbia, Maryland, and get all this stuff done. It keeps it local.
No, no, this was Colombia, South America. And they did this several times. And when I was talking to you about the conspiracy stuff, well, now, and I had some of the older agents that had been around a long time. One in particular was just fantastic, Bill Miller. He just, I can't say enough great about him and historical conspiracy. He was so quiet. He could sit next to you for 3 years. And if he didn't like you, he just wouldn't talk to you. I mean, he'd say hello and good morning and all that. But the knowledge that guy had, it was just, and he taught me a lot of the way they do things because I listened. and uh, and so we start looking in this case, and we had developed. Well, I ended up buying an ounce of cocaine from one of the participants undercover. So he personally sold me an ounce of cocaine. So he was popped. And then we popped him. A couple other people that were with him and went to him. So people started rolling over. So one of the guys who was a cooperator said, well, I was one of the couriers that went down there, and I probably still have some stuff. Let's go to my mother's attic. So he went to his mother's house. He had all his stuff up in her attic. He found a receipt for himself where he stayed at this hotel in Colombia, and it had another one of the targets' names on it. They stayed at a receipt, Tequendama in Colombia, in Bogota. And he had one of the books that they had put the cocaine in, and the back hardcover of it was ripped open, and there was nothing there, just the remains of where the cocaine had been put in. They pressed the cocaine, and they made it so it was as hard as that piece of cardboard they put in. It was thin and the proper dimensions, and that's how they were smuggling that. Not a lot. I mean, it's not a lot of dope, but man, it was. And there was an American who was their coordinator. She was from Detroit, if I remember. And we ultimately indicted her, indicted several other people, and the Colombians threw her out because she wasn't a Colombian native or national. She was an American, and she came to Baltimore, and we convicted her, and she went away, as did several other people.
Welcome home.
Welcome. She couldn't escape Baltimore either, man. She got thrown back here too. But isn't it amazing how creative and the things they do? It's just like think about somebody goes, "Hey, let's put cocaine in books." And if your first thought is, "Are you an idiot?" It's like, "No, we'll press it really hard." So now you have to find the equipment, you have to get the dimensions. There's a lot of work that goes into and how much cocaine would be in a single book? I mean, you're not talking about shipping a kilo in a book. I mean, you're getting what? Ounces?
Yeah, I wouldn't think it was a pound. I don't think, no. I'd be less than a pound. I don't remember now. I knew then about what it would hold, but I don't remember now. It's been so long. But it was. I mean, I'll tell you. It's funny too because there was an agent who was in Bogota at the time, and he was an agent. And he called this American girl and talked to her. And he got some great incriminating conversations that helped us. So she ended up pleading guilty rather than going to trial. She really helped us. Otherwise, just been somebody's word against her. And I ultimately ran into him again because he was an ASAC and then an associate agent in charge in Miami. His name was Mike Kane, and he helped me out a lot on that case. And that was my first little case that I kind of did in Baltimore. And I just always remembered it because it's one of the first ones.
It's exciting. You're going all of a sudden you're going to this international level with your investigations. It's just really cool.
I mean, before I was buying, grams and
hand-to-hand deals and just
an
take
ounce of marijuana, half an ounce of
whack-a-mole. I mean,
PCP.
you arrest a guy and 10 guys take his place. He's in jail and 10 guys have already taken his place.
And it was just very satisfying, and I loved it, and then just went on from there.
I mean, I know you made quite a few cases in Baltimore. What was before we start talking about Barranquilla, because you got to go through language school to do that. What was probably one of the biggest cases you worked on while you were in Baltimore?
Well, there was a guy. He's out now, so I'll leave his name. He did his time. And the FBI had been after him for 25 years, never laid a glove on him. We'd heard about him in the state police. It was kind of like one of those untouchable guys. And there was a whole family of people involved, those relatives and friends and brothers and all that. And I had a thing where I would just say, okay, instead of just taking a target of opportunity, why don't you use the intelligence that everybody keeps compiling everywhere in law enforcement and use it in a sound way? In other words, okay, who's the biggest guy here in your area or area of responsibility or wherever you are? Okay, it's Mr. X. Okay. And we're sure Mr. X is doing all this. Oh yeah, we got this, that, da, 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 da. I said, all right, fine. Mr. X is now the focus. Not who is out there, but Mr. X is the focus. Let's study him. Let's figure out how to get him. And that's what I did. And I'd come up with things that were clever. Like he had one fella that was associated with him. And once this became really overt, who had done time for kidnapping and all that. And he was a pretty nasty guy. So one day I had my suit on, as we wore suits, his short hair and an overcoat. And I had another agent with me. And I went down and introduced myself to him. And he goes, "What are you introducing me for?" I said, "Well, I just told you I'm a special agent with the Department of Justice, DEA." And I said, "And I just thought you should meet me because you're going to be hearing a lot about me because I'm going to put you in federal prison because you're hooked up with this guy and I know what you're doing. And I just don't think it's fair as you run around, you don't know who I am. So I'm just introducing myself. Have a nice day." And I left.
You're a crazy. Some people are going to go, "You're one crazy motherfucker. What the?
Oh yeah.
You're putting a target on yourself." Yeah, here I am. When you see me with binoculars, I'm watching you.
Well, ultimately, when I put the handcuffs on him, a year or two later, year and a half later, he says, "I'll say one thing about you, Athas. You were one persistent pain in the ass." So we
Put that on my tombstone.
Well, we did we developed enough between us, and this was the Anne Arundel County Police. A guy ended up becoming the sheriff of Anne Arundel County, Ronnie Bateman, the young guy, and his father had been my sergeant in the state police. But Ronnie was the guy. He's actually written several books. He's a real good guy, and he was the lead guy, young in his early 20s, in that county police department narcotics section, and he had been after all these people too. Anyway, ultimately we got court authorization to do room bugs and wiretaps. And it was kind of cool because this is like things do. We had to find a place to do a listing post. So we ended up renting a houseboat because there's a lot of water in the area where it was. And we did
That's what I say. That makes perfect sense.
And so we put a room bug in there. We, followed them around. Well, we had a court authorization to do all this.
Hold on, you're getting too far ahead because it's one thing to do a wiretap because you can do a Title III, you go to the phone company, get all that. Let's talk about the room bug because now we're talking about clandestine entry. We're talking about basically a black bag job to get that in there. Tell us about getting that in there. Once you get, who did it? How'd you guys do it? Kind of walk us through that.
We had specialists that did that kind of stuff. And of course,
now were they DEA people
yes.
Or were they contracted?
No, DEA,
okay,
DEA people. And then you have to make sure that you follow everybody that lives in that house and who else might come there, and you make sure they're not anywhere near there because you don't want any interaction. And then they go in and they find a place and they put the bug in. Unfortunately for us, it was a spike bug up through the floor, and it was in an area where the dog used to clean himself.
So you got a lot of what? Slurpee sounds?
A lot of licking sounds. But it was right for the dog. But the phone got us what we needed. And
I think you got some Murphy in you because that's a Murphy's Law type thing right there.
Hey, but see, this is like shades of like espionage and spy stuff when you talk about going in and planting bugs in somebody's house. So these guys also had to be obviously trained, and if they needed to defeat locks, they had to be able to pick locks, and bypass those and defeat security alarms and
that's correct.
Stuff like that. How tough was it for them to get into this particular location, considering he was Mr. X?
No problem. They got in.
They did.
Yeah.
Now, how long did it take them to get in and out?
Not long. It just they're
really
good. I don't
know if it was like this. I don't know if it was like this back then when you were doing that, Lenny. But did you have to find the target before the team went in? And then you had to put surveillance on the target.
Yep. I was sitting. I was sitting in the listening post and was sort of coordinating everything when this was all going on. Yes, I remember. Yeah, he's here. And it's another way too, from the conversations that you intercept, you knew when something was planned, and they had something planned for the evening that particular day. So that's when we coordinated to have everything done.
Now, how many rooms did you end up?
Just one.
How many rooms did you end up? Just one?
Just one, yeah.
And you got a lot of Slurpee sounds.
Yeah, we didn't get anything of any value at all. But we did from the phone. In fact, the main target had moved out of state. The main guy and the FBI was helping us. Saw more of them at the press release than I did anywhere, but that's all right. That's another story. Anyway,
Oh, there's something new.
and so we would get phone calls once in a while, and I had a conversation. And was it before or after? Oh no, it was before. He calls, and he had moved to a southern state. Let's let it go at that. And he calls our target that we have the phone on, which was some relation to him, nephew or cousin or something, I forget, and tells him about this FBI guy he plays cards with, that he doesn't play cards with, but his friend plays cards with. And the FBI guy was bragging about our investigation.
Oh my God.
And yada, yada, yada. So this guy's telling our target on the phone, well, I'm glad my file's down here. I figured he'd get down here sooner or later, but I'm glad I know it now. And they talk back and forth. So I ended up calling the FBI agent. I wasn't very nice to him. And then I get called into the office because the SAC of the FBI in Baltimore called our SAC, who I really liked, loved the guy. He's not with us anymore. His name's Tom McGrady, and told him that what I said was go through their headquarters like shit through a goose. Because I told the FBI, I just said, well, you can't really tell I heard anything. You don't even know what I said, yada, yada. I said, well, that's all right. We had a grand jury. We'll probably be in touch. And he said, you can't do that. Don't call him up threat, which I shouldn't have done, really, but I did. So because he pissed me off, because he shouldn't have been running his mouth off like that. And but anyway, we ended up getting a search warrant. And if you remember Jeff Sessions, our former attorney general, he was the U.S. attorney in the town we were in at the time.
Yeah, but hold on a second there, Lenny. What does it say about the guy who's so sophisticated? He's supposed to be untouchable. He's getting this information that the FBI agent is doing, and yet he's still talking on the phone. Did he not figure that you guys could tap the phones?
No, I guess not. Nobody had ever touched him in years. He'd been a criminal his entire life, and no one had ever touched him in years.
And see, there again is one of the key lessons we've learned from a lot of these podcasts we've done and sessions, interviews we've done, is that the arrogance of some of these folks to think they're untouchable. And even though the evidence is in front of them, it's like the idiot Smurf. Who was it we were talking to? They go, "Oh yeah, I knew you were a cop." Well, then you're the biggest idiot on the block to keep buying and selling dope.
I had a guy in the state police one time make me raise my right hand, swear under oath I wasn't a cop. I did.
Yeah.
And then when we arrested him, he said, "You can't do it. I'm getting off because you lied." I said, "Okay."
Well, that was Sherry. If they ask you 3 times if you're a cop and you say no, then you can't do that. By law, you have to admit if you're a cop after the 3rd time.
That's like these sovereign citizens that think if they say all this crazy stuff that it makes things better for them, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and here's a spoiler alert, folks. It never works out well for those guys. So let's go back to this. So that's interesting. So let's talk about that. So you get past the FBI. Talking about the case, this guy's still talking. So continue on from there. You tell us about getting the guy.
We got a bunch of search warrants, and I had this one trailer that they used to talk about, and I listened to it later. And I didn't catch it at the time because I used to come in, even if I wasn't working as a monitor, I'd listen to all the calls because it was my case. And he says, well, if you got to go in there and somebody's there, just say you got to use the bathroom. Well, that didn't mean anything to me at the time. And it was a trailer. So we ended up doing our search warrants when we accumulated enough evidence. We did a search warrant at the main target's house down in the state he was living in. And we got a cane gun. It was a walking cane that was actually a 12-gauge shotgun. He's a convicted felon. A, B, that's a National Firearms Act weapon. So we indicted him in that federally in that jurisdiction.
That's a 5-year, minimum 5-year on that one.
He got convicted in a trial. We went to a trial. And he, I think he got 3 years. So he's on ice. So that's when I started walking around like to the guy I told you, the former kidnapper, and says, I just want you to meet me because you're gonna be hearing about me. And then we just started doing a grand jury investigation.
Hey, players, that is the end of part 1. Part 2, as always, comes out on Thursday. In the meantime, check us out at Game of Crimes on Twitter, at Game of Crimes Podcast on Facebook, at the Instagram. But where you got to be, got to be on patreon.com/Game of Crimes. We have a ton of good stuff, including If you are at the right level, Guardian of the Realm and Warden of the Throne, we have just released Part 1, Episode 1 of The Real DEA Narcos, talking about the real DEA Narcos, Cali Edition. Chris Feistel and Dave Mitchell go in depth, 16 hours, about how they took down the Cali cartel. Information you will not hear anywhere else in the world, not on Netflix, not anywhere, not in a book, only right here on Game of Crimes at patreon.com/Game of Crimes. In the meantime, also go check out our webpage, gameofcrimespodcast.com. We've got the latest merch, pictures for every episode that we put up, books that our guests write. We only put up books that they write. We put them up there. So we thank you once again for being a player in the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all, the Game of Crimes.